Hey there YouTube, welcome to the ACH Automotive channel. Today we're working on a 2013 Chrysler 200 with the 3.6 liter Pentastar V6 motor. We are working on changing the spark plugs in it for the 100K service interval. That's when Chrysler says that's when they recommend that you change the spark plugs in this particular motor. I think that's pretty standard across most Chrysler products these days. So we're going to change that. If you watched one of my videos on doing it on the 2015 Jeep Cherokee with the 3.2 liter, the procedure is fairly similar. This car I think will be a little easier, less cab forward in this particular car from what I can tell. So I think it should be pretty straightforward job to do, and you know, it should be pretty easy that you can do it in your home shop if you have the right tools. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe below, give it a thumbs up, and if there's something you want to know, feel free to leave me a comment below. Let's get started. The very first thing we've got to do is pop this cover off here for the engine. It just snaps in place. There's a couple of studs underneath it. You just work it back and forth. You don't want to break it. Let's pull that out of the way. Just like on the 3.2 liter, the back ones are probably going to be easier to do because you don't have to take the intake manifold off. We do have, in order to get to the front coil packs and plugs here, we'll have to take the upper intake manifold off. And I do have brand new gaskets for this. You're supposed to change them when you take it off. We'll take our flat blade and we'll disconnect this breather tube here. And actually, you might not have to, you might be able to get away without taking this air box off. Yeah, we can do that. We don't have to take this air box off. We can leave this here. You just start disconnecting stuff here. That's probably your intake air temperature sensor. Just kick that to the side. We want to disconnect these upper vacuum lines here. And again, you might need a little pick if this has never been apart. Shoot that off to the side there. For these connectors here, this little red tab, they're double locked. You want to slide the red tab backwards and then compress it, and then it'll come right off just like that. You'll want to get a little trim stick tool and pop these out of the intake manifold because those will be in the way. Same thing with this connector here. This connector did not have a tab on it, a double lock on it. I think it looks like it might have at one point. So we'll let me finish getting these taken off here, and we'll get this back plenum off, and we'll be able to change the back plugs. Let's get our throttle body off here. So these double locked tabs, you just take a little pick or a little screwdriver. You can usually slide them back and then just pop them off like that. There we go. That's out of the way. Really need to get a tray or something. Take our trim stick here. Just work it back. You don't want to break anything, especially if the car's got some miles on it. You are liable to damage something if you're not careful. Sometimes these don't come out all the way, or they don't come out easily. There we go. Yeah, see, that's not the prettiest piece there. All right, so we've got everything disconnected back there. The next thing that we need to do, this is probably the hardest part right here, is this clip. And sometimes you can pop it up. It's usually stuck. You can see in there, but this clip is usually the trickiest part of this job to get this out. The centerpiece pulls up, and then this should all come right off. All right, we are almost ready to take this plenum off here. Still fighting with this clip. Got that piece all out of the way. Got the vacuum lines disconnected. They're just hanging out here. Just remember where things go, and you know, make sure you hook everything back up when you're done. Once you get this out of the way, we should be able to do the back plugs. We should be able to get to the back coil packs and plugs. The back side of this just pops up. You can see it's free, and there's no clamp here. It just sits against the throttle body. So once we get this clip out here, this will come off. The trick to getting this clip out here is come in at an angle with your trim stick, and if you pull up just like that, it should release it, and you should be able to take the clip out, and now your intake manifold or your resonator assembly here should be able to come off. All right, get the back part of the plenum off. We're going to disconnect our Oh yeah, somebody's definitely been in here before because all the clips are... My sister did tell me that the dealer, when she first got this, had replaced one single spark plug. Why you would go through all this work? Why you would go through all this work to replace one plug, I have no idea. Coil packs are 10mm bolts. Bolts should stay in the coil pack. Pull these out. We'll do one at a time. Just work it back and forth a little bit. You gotta break the seat on the boot. There we go. There's one coil out. Now you want to be very careful. This wall where the plug is very thin, so you don't want to damage it. It should be a 5/8 socket. Okay, slowly drop this down in the hole. Like I said, it's a 5/8 spark plug socket. There we go. And let's see if we can break her loose. There we go. Some guys will use impact tools on spark plugs, and I just can't. I don't know. That's like the one thing I won't use an impact tool on. It just doesn't sit well with me. I get there are definitely some cases for it, like on a 5.4 liter Ford 3-valve, where you're probably going to break the plug anyway, and you need a little extra oomph to get it out. But largely, they shouldn't be in there very tight. I think this torque spec on this is like 12 or 13 foot-pounds. I'll have to look at the service manual before we put these back. Sometimes if they don't stick in the spark plug socket, they have, oh, you know what? The rubber in that looks like it's worn out. There's a rubber piece in there that'll hold them in the socket. So sometimes you might have to go in there with a tool like such and pull them out. There we go. Yes. Yep. Yeah, that's kind of looks about the same as what the Jeep did with similar mileage. So yeah, they're definitely worn. You can see they're worn. I don't know if the camera will pick up on it. Got some customer provided Champion Iridium spark plugs, part number 940RER 8ZWYCB4. According to the Chrysler factory service manual, we've got to gap these, make sure the gap's to 43 thousandths. So let's take a look here. It's a gap tool, and we will put that in there. We're pretty close. Pretty close to 43 thousandths. So let me get this out of here. Put a little never seize on it, stick it back in the hole, snug it down loosely, and we'll torque it down to 13 foot-pounds. Just put a little tiny bit of never seize on it. Just a little bit. Go find our extensions and stick this back in the hole. There we go. So I'll snug this down. All right, there we go. I do not want to torque that too much. I don't like, it always scares me to strip or break a spark plug, so there we go. All right, let's go get some of our new grease here. This is the grease we're going to be using instead of the normal dielectric grease. It's made by Superlube. It's a multi-purpose synthetic grease. It is dielectric, but it's non-silicone based. It's for automotive, etc. So this should not eat at the boot of your coil pack. So we'll put just a drop around the edge and slide the coil pack down back into the plug well, like so, and tighten it up. Again, I do one at a time so we don't mix up where I try and keep the coils in the same spot, etc. So there we go. Plug this guy back in, and we'll move over to the middle cylinder here. Same procedure. That's number 2. There we go. Just go nice and slow. You don't want to break anything. This one's definitely a little more stiffer than the last one we just did. There we go. Yeah, that one's probably not quite as worn as the other one. It's worn, or it's getting there, but... All right. I know I said I typically do one at a time, but we've only got 2 left back here, so I'm going to pull this one while I'm at it, just to save a few minutes here. This one will be the trickiest one back here because of the throttle body. And you could take the upper intake manifold off to do it, and I'm going to get there, but I wanted the back ones done before I took the front apart. All right, got our plugs gapped, little never sees on them. Put a little grease on the boots of the coils. So we are going to slide these into place here. There we go. Alrighty, move over to our next one. Now we get our plugs in, torque them down a little bit, and throw the coil packs on. Just gonna gently torque them down. There we go. This one. Throw our coils in. I already greased them. Throw this coil in. Don't forget to plug your coils back in. And make sure they snap and click into place. There we go. We're good. So there's the back set. Okay, we've got the back 3 plugs changed. We've got to take this intake manifold off to, or this part of the intake manifold off to get to the front plugs. We've got to disconnect this breather tube here. There's a handful of 10mm bolts. This bracket is a 13mm bolt. There are 2 10mm bolts up front here, and then there's all these 8mm that hold it to the lower intake manifold. Those will stay captured in the intake manifold, so we've got to break those free. We also have new gaskets. You want to replace these gaskets when you take this apart. You might have to break the seal a little bit if you have a pick tool, or I'm just using a plastic trim stick so that we don't damage the boot. There we go. I just put that out of the way there. Now I did screw a little bit of Coil on these studs sticking out here just because they look like they haven't been off in a while, and we don't want to break anything. So 10mm bolts up here, or nuts. This one. And once you get this bracket off and these bolts undone, the intake should tip up like that. And then we'll have access to the front coils and do the same procedure up front. So this bolt down here is a 13mm. It is tight. I don't know if If I can get my ratcheting wrench on there. Yeah, I've already cracked it loose, but getting a ratchet in there is a little bit tight, so, but I can't get this in there, there's no room. So we'll just sneak that in there. Let's see if I can get in there with my hands and get that loose now. Ooh, I don't want to spin that off all the way. There we go. So down here is a wiring harness with a tab to the engine. We'll just pop that out. You don't want to break the tab. There we go. That should give us some wiggle room here to get this coolant line bracket out of the way, because there is another nut behind that. All right, got our stud out there. We'll just leave the bracket on the car, it's out of the way. We should now, I think, be able to pull the bolts on the intake manifold and get it out of the way. And again, these bolts will stay captured in the intake manifold, so you shouldn't have to worry about pulling them out. Almost there, I think. This is the last one. You may have to go through and pull them up just a little bit so that they're out of the way. There we go. And boom, we are off and now have access to the front plugs and coils. A couple of rags over that just to keep, you don't want dirt to get into the engine. There we go. Pull this sound deadening off. Don't forget to put this back on. If you watched my Jeep video, I did, and I had to take it all apart again to put it back on. Same procedure as the backside. 10mm bolts hold each coil pack in. We'll disconnect our coil packs here. There we go. Oops, don't want to take that. Do one at a time. Just crack them loose. There we go. Twist it a little bit. There we go. Put our coil pack on the side there, and let's get our plug socket. Let's crack this guy loose here. There we go. That one's got a lot of buildup on it, but not terribly bad, all things considered. Plug wells look nice and clean. Got our plug back in. It's gapped to 43 thousandths. Let's torque it down here, and then we'll move on to the next one. Grease on our coil pack here. And there goes the cap to my grease. Wonderful. Slide our coil pack down here, and we will tighten this guy up. Like so. Make sure you reconnect it. Make sure it snaps in place. And I am going to find the cap to my grease. Sometimes you gotta wiggle it back and forth just to break the seal a little bit. There we go. That on there. There we go. A little worn, not too bad. Throw the new one in there. Snug that down, and we'll torque it down with the torque wrench. A little grease on the boot there. And plug her back in. There we go. Last one. Yeah, that one's definitely worn too. Not the worst I've seen. Last plug in there. Snug it down. And torque it. So a little grease on the boot there. Plug her back in like that, and boom, we are good to go. So that is how you change the plugs. Now we've got to finish putting it back together. We got to change the gaskets for the intake manifold, and put the intake manifold and the insulation and stuff back on. So the hard part at this point is pretty much done. So this is our Felpro gasket kit, part number MS97204. It's for upper and lower. We're only using the upper, so we need the 6 upper gaskets there. Pretty easy to take these guys out. Just take a little pick or screwdriver, pop them out. You don't want to damage the intake manifold. It's just plastic, so just go very gentle with them. And putting them in is just as easy. You just pop them in, and then we'll tighten it all down. There is a torque sequence for the intake manifold, which I'll look up here in a minute. Perfect. Let's open up our package here. Place our new ones in like so. There we go. All right, all 6 gaskets have been replaced there. We'll put the unused ones aside. Just gonna wipe down the mating surfaces here. So when you put this back on, it's gonna go in at an angle here like this. And then, there we go, that's better. Okay, so now it's back on. We can tighten these guys down. I'm just gonna gently snug them till we get everything back in place, and then we'll do the torque sequence on them. I gotta look it up. There we go. Now we've got to put, the next step will be to put our bracket on back here. Get that in place, and we'll get this corner back assembled, and then we'll do the front bolts and start putting the plan back on. Alrighty. This bracket lined up here. There we go. Alrighty. Last 2 bolts here. Again, I'll just put a little never sees in them just to keep things from rusting up. All right, before we put the plenum back on, we're going to torque our intake manifold bolts to 89 inch-pounds. So we're going to start with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So there is a pattern that you have to follow for this. All right, we're going to start with this guy over here. There we go. We're going to move over here to number 2. We're going to go up 1 to number 3. Come back 1 to number 4. Up 1 to 5. Across to 6. And lastly, up to number 7. There we go. All right, so that part's done. This is back in. We can put the plenum back on the back. Slide our plenum back here, like so. All right. Put it over, and it's just gonna pressure fit against the throttle body. And then there are 2 studs in the back that it sits on. There we go. All right, that's in there, and then we'll put our clip up front. Intake manifold, air temperature sensor, plug that back in. So this guy goes down in the hole like so. Push this in. There we go. Now our plenum is back on here. We can get our harness up and around here for the throttle body. Make sure you put your clips back in their place. Make sure you lock your clips. That guy back in there. That guy's got to go up there. Double check all your work when you're done too to make sure you don't miss anything. Guy goes over the top, so we'll wait to put the other piece back in. I think we look good here. Just got to get that connection on. Alrighty. Slide that elbow over that. Plenum back there. There we go. Slide it over this side here. Connect up our vacuum line. Make sure you put your grommets back in there. There we go. That guy needs to go back in there too. All right, let's get our flat blade. Tighten all those down and double check everything, and we'll see how she starts. Ugh. All right, sounds good. All right, well, that's how you change the spark plugs on a 3.6 liter Chrysler motor. This was in a 2013 Chrysler 200. Not a hard job, very similar to the 2015 Jeep Cherokee job that we did on the channel. You know, not too bad if you have the factory service manuals and the, you know, some basic hand tools and stuff. Pretty straightforward to do, not too bad. You know, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you know, if there's something you want to know, leave me a comment below. You can follow along on social media at ACH Automotive. And you know, please subscribe to the channel and turn on that bell notification so you get an alert whenever I post the latest video. Thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned for the next video.